Maybe you identify with being an empath. You've always been a natural caretaker. You feel things so deeply, it hurts sometimes. You're caring, you're intuitive, compassionate. Having high empathy is one of the super traits that many of my clients have. But having high empathy without boundaries, without power, it's not actually connection. It's collapse, it's extraction. My teacher calls it death in slow motion, which I thought was dramatic until I see it play out in decades of doing this work and decades of helping women heal as a naturopathic doctor on the cellular, hormonal health, functional medicine side of things, and on the psychosocial, emotional pleasure fulfillment side, the mindset side of coaching. And when you can feel everyone else's pain and you're thinking 10 steps ahead for everyone else, and it is impossible for you to put your feelings first, it's not actually intimacy. It's erasing yourself, it's pretzeling yourself and dressing it up as love and caretaking. I'm Dr. Jordan Wiggins, and I help high achieving women with super traits rebuild their lives after extractive love, divorce, betrayal, decades of overgiving using the pleasure centered method. Most women try to fix their relationships. My work isn't about fixing, forcing intimacy, communicating better. It's about rewiring what made you believe that depletion was love in the first place. Women like us, women with super traits, we've been called codependent, people pleasers, overfunctioners. We've been told that we're too much, when in reality, we've simply never been met. This podcast gives you the language for what you've been living, why it's felt so hard, and how to build a life and relationships rooted in desire, safety, power. If you're a high-functioning woman exhausted from holding it all together, you're in the right place. Maybe you've chosen to stay, but you're ready to stop suffering. Maybe you're preparing to leave, but with your power intact. Maybe you've already left, but those same old patterns keep showing up. This is where we decode your super traits. We name the invisible power dynamics that have been draining you. We rewire your nervous system so love, intimacy, and desire can become nourishing again. Because you don't need better communication. You don't need to work harder at being loved, heard, supported. You need the pleasure-centered method. A new map back to yourself, your power, and your erotic aliveness. I love empathy. It's one of the most magnetic super traits. It's why people trust you, why they count on you, why they tell you things that they don't tell anyone else. Like, are you ever out places and strangers are telling you their whole life story and you go deep right away? Surface conversations about the weather and fluff are not for you. For many of us, so empathy is a great thing, but when it is a super trait, having high empathy, empathy was born out of hyper attunement, not out of safety. So we didn't just learn to feel and feel others' feelings. We learned to put our energy out and scan the room. Every tone, every pause, every sigh, because predicting someone's moods was how we survived. It was how we stayed safe. It was how we secured love. So this high empathy came out of hypervigilance and not having our needs met. So our body, our empathy became our radar. We were always reading others and adjusting our behavior accordingly. And after years of that, decades of that, our high empathy, our compassion for others is actually a form of control. So we start to think, if I can keep them calm, I will be safe. I'll have love. And I think for me, identifying as empathic or a highly sensitive person, It gives us things to focus on, but we're not actually fixing the root of the problem. What are we born this way? Are some people born more ego compromised, more selfish, more narcissistic? And that's the perfect match. And I see many, many, many of my clients are in relationship with people with personality disorders, with covert traits of personality disorders, because the superwoman has high empathy, high tolerance, high forgiveness. So it's the perfect storm to be paired with somebody who is the opposite of you. So the women that I work with, were they born that way or were they trained that way? Trained in family systems where feelings weren't safe to be expressed, where you became the emotional anchor, the regulator, the one who understood everybody, tried to harmonize things, the parentified child. So we're called people pleasers, we're called codependent, we're putting all these labels on it as an adult. But really, if we are not taking a step back and looking at the system as a whole, we learned emotions were too much and everyone else's emotions were your responsibility. And by focusing on everyone else's emotions, we lost sight of our own. So now we're over apologizing when somebody else is uncomfortable. We carry guilt and shame that doesn't belong to us. We rush to explain, to manage, to soothe instead of letting silence work. We say it's fine when it isn't. So we can read the room in a heartbeat, but we've lost sight of our own feelings, of our bodies. Yes, our bodies know, because we're more in tune with everyone else's nervous systems than our own. And I have yet to meet a high functioning superwoman that doesn't have some form of compassion fatigue, where high empathy is like it's activating the pain centers in our brain. So without boundaries or being able to regulate ourselves, disconnect ourselves, and co regulate in a healthy way, this is chronic stress on our bodies. And in the short term, when we're managing conflict or we're walking on eggshells, we look calm. Like we look calm when things are going sideways. But in the long term, we're dissociated, we're burnt out, we're crusty. And this is why I have so many women with super traits tell me, I'm burnt out. I have ADHD. I have a hormone imbalance. And it's usually yes, and it's usually high empathy masquerading as love. And really, when we have high empathy and we don't have the tools, boundaries as an invitation for intimacy, the ability to disconnect and not manage someone else's emotions. So I want to give you an example. I want to talk about how empathy keeps you in unequal relationships and what happens if nothing changes. So one of my clients' wife, successful business owner, empathy is her highest super trait. Head to the show notes and take the super trait quiz if you haven't done it, so you know what your super traits are. Also, feel free to reach out to me, reply to the email, DM me on Instagram, and I can give you your full super trait profile. So part of her concern was that her husband said, like, you're so selfish. You always make things about you. Your standards are so high. I can never meet your needs. And she, like, this is the opposite of her experience because she felt like all she did was care about him and others and walk on eggshells. So she felt like she was caring too much and couldn't stop, didn't know how to stop caring. And I remember thinking that, where everyone else's feelings were my responsibility. So she wasn't caring too much. She was caring instead of feeling herself. She was losing herself, which isn't actually caring, it's controlling. So every conflict, if she went to him about something that hurt her feelings or he wasn't meeting her needs, every conflict turned into a dissertation on his feelings. It always ended up centering around him. And repair would mean that she had to manage his shame and his feelings. And her body learned that in this relationship, honesty equals danger, equals him withdrawing. Okay. And we can't control him and we cannot control his side of the street. But what I practiced with this client was detachment, boundaries as invitations to intimacy. But this means that she has to stop the focus on his feelings above all else and be able to locate her own. And she finally started to see the truth that her empathy had been for everyone but her. And when you erase yourself in the equation of a relationship, that's not actually intimacy. It's controlling. And we can't be mad at others when we've erased ourselves. And the moment that she stopped trying to fix him, manage him, and focused on herself, it it felt foreign. She panicked. She didn't know what to do because her entire life since childhood had been based on being hypervigilant on other people's feelings. And these are the tools that I teach in the Super Trait Society. Do you know what happens when you start setting boundaries as a gateway to intimacy? Your energy changes. You stop over explaining. You stop apologizing. You stop rescuing. You start moving with this quiet authority, the kind that turns heads when you walk into rooms. And it changes the dynamics in relationships without saying a word. And if you want to keep doing what you've been doing, the over explaining, the over functioning, the disappointment on disappointment and not having your needs met, go ahead. Keep doing what you're doing. Want to practice with us inside the Super Trait Society. It is a 6-month container where high functioning women learn to stop performing empathy and intimacy. And we start embodying influence from a place of grounded power. You've already done the work, the personal development work, the awareness work. You can name your attachment style and your love languages, and it hasn't gotten you anywhere. This mentorship and community is for women reclaiming their erotic authority, emotional command, and feminine sovereignty. You've spent years managing everyone else's comfort. You don't need to yell, demand, withdraw to be heard. We need to understand our super traits, reclaim our power, and everything around us will rearrange itself. This isn't about leather unless you want it to be. It's about energetic authority, the kind that makes you unignorable in bed, business, and life. The Super Trade Society is our training ground for that kind of pleasure and power that makes you magnetic, where women who have survived coercion, confusion, caretaking on overdrive learn the sacred art of command, surrender, reciprocity. This is 6 months. We will have a module a month on our super traits. There will be 2 full-day workshops and a 3-day in-person training. This is designed for actually doing, not passively learning. We are learning the art of command, surrender, and reciprocity. Something that when we do not understand our super traits, it is like the key that we have been missing the whole time. Head to the show notes, fill out an application. We'll get a time on my calendar and make sure that this is the right fit for you. High empathy is not the problem. Absence of power is. When you stop absorbing everyone else's emotions, you finally have room for your own pleasure, your own truth, your own turn on. And that is the most magnetic thing. The world does not need you numb, crusty, overgiving. It needs you alive, connected to your intuition and in your power. When we don't know what our super traits are and we default to fixing, overgiving, managing, hypervigilance, we don't have the intimacy and connection that we so deeply crave. And until we learn those skills, your empathy will have you curdling into exhaustion. You start resenting the very people you were trying to rescue and want to love and connect to. You lose access to pleasure because pleasure requires presence and you are never fully there. You're never in your body. You're in your head or you're out taking the temperature of the room. Your intuition turns into anxiety. You're constantly overthinking. Love starts to feel like labor. But when you learn the skills that I teach in the Super Trait Society, when you learn containment, when you learn detachment, when you learn feeling without fixing, empathy becomes a superpower again. Because empathy is not meant to drain you, it is meant to connect you. And this trait seduces you, seduces the women that I work with into unequal relationships. You think empathy makes you loving, but it makes you the emotional caretaker. You're soothing moods, you're managing triggers, and you're calling it intimacy. But meanwhile, your needs go unmet and the dynamic slides from mutual to maternal. And that's not sexy or arousing for most people. If that's your thing, go for it. So there's an empathy-based coercion that almost all of my clients have when your empathy is weaponized and you stay overgiving because watching somebody else's discomfort or holding them accountable feels more dangerous than depleting yourself. Head to the show notes, apply for the Super Trade Academy. 6 months. Let's make sure that it is a fit. And I promise that this will be more eye-opening. You will be able to take different actions. These patterns around you will rearrange, and you can finally stop being exhausted and crusty in your relationships and start to be met.